Yeller, it's Aaron here again, and this time I'm going to be predicting the Famous Idaho Potato Bowl out at fabulous Boise State University. Yes, sir, two teams are going to be playing on the Smurf turf. For those that don't know, this is a game I thought I might be going to at one point. I'm a Ball State fan, being that I go to Ball State, and I'm hoping to go to their bowl game this year, but we got lucky and didn't get put in this one, because that'd be a haul. However, there is some action shown in this. This game is between the Buffalo Bulls and the San Diego State Aztecs. I'm going to start by talking about the Buffalo Bulls here. They have a haul to get out there, going from New York to Idaho, and it's going to be cold, probably, but at least they're used to that. Like I said, New York. These guys are a team that I haven't gotten to see that much of this year. They're one of the few games I never really or few teams I never really watched that much. But they were a really solid team. Their schedule started out brutal. They played at Ohio State and at Baylor in their first 2 weeks of the year. And for those who don't know, both teams had outside shots at the national title game over different parts of the year. They got beat 40-20 at Ohio State to start the year. One that's important because that's the only opponent they and San Diego State have in common. And then they got shellacked 70-13 by the Baylor Bears, second week of the season. But after that, they rode consistency clear down. They started off with a nail biter against a team they shouldn't have had a nail biter with. They hosted a D2 opponent called Stony Brook in their third game, and they won in 5. Yes, that's right, 5 overtimes, 26-23. Not really the score you'd expect from a 5 overtime game, but so they don't have much of an offense. That's fine. They had a pretty easy schedule. They had Connecticut, Eastern and Western Michigan, Massachusetts, all very subpar teams. No offense to any of them. They played Kent State, who was decent but not great. Ohio, same thing, decent, not great. And then they had a game against Toledo. They lost at Toledo. The Glass Bowl is hard to win at, though, so I can't knock them for that. That was a 51-41 loss. They did beat Miami 44-7. And then throughout all that, they were in contention to play for the MAC championship game, and they hosted Bowling Green in a game that determined who went to the MAC championship, but they got beat 24-7. These guys are very, I guess, pedestrian, kind of average in offense, but they're balanced. They average about 230 a game passing and about 172 rushing. Both are literally 67th and 66th in the nation. They only score 30 to 31 points a game, which is only 58th in the nation, but they also only gave up 22 points a game, which is 27th in the nation. That's not too bad. Their defense is pretty stout, but it was also a little skewed because after Ohio State and Baylor, until I guess Toledo, really, they didn't play any good teams. They kind of got the easiest slate and MAC play that they could have gotten, and they almost rode it to the MAC championship, but not quite. Going on next to San Diego State, they had a little harder schedule. They are the third team and the third bowl game in a row to come out of the Mountain West Conference. They went 7-5. Buffalo went 8-4. If I didn't say that. They started out the year with a loss against an FCS team, Eastern Illinois, 40-19. But Eastern Illinois was actually pretty stout, so I'm not going to hate too much. They then went to Ohio State and got beat 42-7. They got shellacked, much worse than Buffalo's 40-20 game against them, but it's hard to really compare. The travel was different. San Diego State, in my knowledge, was a pretty young team this year. They were still learning at that point. They went on the next week and lost to Oregon State, but only by a score of 34-30. And Oregon State was pretty decent this year, so that's not a bad loss. They then went on. They beat New Mexico State, big whoop. They beat a decent Nevada team in overtime, 51-44 at home. They kind of won every game they should have. They beat San Jose State, which, as I mentioned, had beaten Fresno State. But they also lost to Fresno State, 35-28 in overtime. They beat Boise State in overtime, 34-31, late in the year. It was a big one. But then they kind of laid an egg in their last game against UNLV and lost 45-19. It's a team that's really hard to get a read on. They're not super good at anything. They're kind of like Buffalo. They're kind of mid-range, pedestrian. They're 35th in the nation in passing, which is solid, with 260-ish yards a game, and they only ran for 160, which is 74th in the nation. They scored about 28 points a game, 4 touchdowns. That's pretty solid, I guess, but it's still the bottom half. They're 71st in the nation with it. And they gave up 32 points a game. But in their defense, their strength of schedule was a little harder than Buffalo's because the Mountain West Conference was a little better than the MAC overall, even if the MAC may have had the better top teams. This game is kind of hard to predict. Both teams have kind of been hit or miss. They kind of wish-wash through the year. And the spread really shows that. San Diego State's projected to win, but only by a point, and that could change anytime over the next week. This is hard to predict. I think that San Diego State should be able to win this game. I think it'll be close. Both teams are very identical. I think San Diego State's shown it against a harder strength of schedule, and I think that's going to kind of show itself when they play each other. Overall, I think that the Aztecs are going to be able to outlast Buffalo in the second half. I think the final score will be 34-24 San Diego State. And that's my pick for the Idaho Potato Bowl. Adios, y'all.